The twin suns of the distant colony, SCIFI-4, were setting over the rolling fields of silver grass. The light shimmered like liquid metal, painting the horizon in gold and amber. In the small garden of the human settlement, a little boy ran through the tall grass laughing. His name was Leo, a curious child of 7, with messy dark hair and eyes that always seemed to be searching for something extraordinary in the ordinary. Not far away, under the shade of a glowing alien tree, a small girl watched him carefully. She was Elira, the daughter of an important diplomat from a nearby alien planet. Her skin shimmered faintly in shades of blue and silver, and her large eyes reflected the twin suns in a way that made her seem almost like a creature of light herself. She had always been cautious around humans, taught by her elders that they were unpredictable even if they were kind. But Leo's laughter was different. It was pure, unguarded, and it stirred something inside her, a curiosity she could not suppress. "Hey, watch out," Leo called, hopping over a silver bush, his small hands outstretched to catch a falling orb-shaped seed that twirled like a tiny planet in the air. He caught it just in time, grinning triumphantly. Elira stepped forward, her voice soft but cautious. "Be careful. Those seeds can sting if you drop them." Leo looked up at her, surprised. "Oh, you're Elira, right? My mom says you live nearby." She nodded, stepping closer. "Yes, I was just watching you play." Leo's grin widened. "Do you want to play with me? I can show you a game my dad taught me. It's about catching the wind." Elira tilted her head. "Catching the wind?" Leo nodded eagerly, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. "Yes. You run and the wind touches your hands and you try to grab it before it runs away." Elira hesitated. She had never played games like this with humans, but something about the boy's energy made her want to try. Carefully, she stepped forward. Leo grabbed her hand, and together they ran across the silver fields. The wind whistled past them, ruffling their hair and clothes, and for a while, there were no worries, no rules, no expectations, only laughter and joy. They played until the twin suns dipped below the horizon, and the garden was bathed in a gentle purple glow. Leo sat down on the grass, breathing heavily, his cheeks flushed. "That was amazing." "You're really fast for your size," Elira smiled. "You're not too bad yourself." For a human, Leo laughed. "Hey, that's supposed to be a compliment." She giggled, the sound like wind chimes. For a moment, they were just two children, laughing together in a world that often seemed too large and complicated for them. Then Leo grew serious, his small face earnest. He looked at her with wide, hopeful eyes. "Elira, do you think, maybe one day, we could be together?" Elira blinked. "Together? What do you mean?" He swallowed nervously, then said softly, "I mean, like, I'll marry you one day." For a moment, Elira stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. The idea seemed impossible, silly even, but the sincerity in his voice made her heart flutter. You really mean that?" she asked. Leo nodded solemnly. "Yes, I promise. One day I'll come back and I'll marry you." Elira laughed, shaking her head. "You're just a little boy. How could you marry anyone?" "I'll grow up," he said confidently, "and I'll come back for you. I promise." She smiled, touched by the boy's earnestness. "All right, I'll remember that promise." They shook hands, sealing the childish vow, though neither fully understood the weight of their words. For now, it was a game, a fantasy, but it was also the beginning of something neither of them could yet name. The peace of the evening was suddenly broken by the sound of alarms from the settlement. A warning signal flashed across the colony, red lights blinking urgently. Leo's parents called him, their voices anxious. "Leo, come quickly!" Elira stood up as well, her instincts on high alert. "What's happening?" Leo ran toward his parents, glancing back at Elira. I have to go, but I'll come back, I promise." Elira nodded, her heart pounding. "I'll wait for you." That night, as the twin moons rose over SCIFI-4, the settlement was in chaos. A minor quake had struck a nearby mining area, causing several equipment malfunctions and trapping a few workers. Humans and aliens worked side by side to stabilize the area, but it was dangerous. Leo's father, a skilled engineer, was at the forefront, and Leo insisted on helping. Though he was small, he had a keen mind and a fearless heart. Elira watched from a distance as the boy she had laughed with earlier now moved with determination, assisting where he could, carrying small tools, and supporting the workers. She realized that even as a child, he had courage and a sense of responsibility that set him apart. By the time the situation was under control, the first hints of dawn painted the horizon in soft pink and silver. Exhausted but relieved, the colony's residents returned to their homes. Leo, dirty and tired, spotted Elira waiting by the glowing tree. He ran to her, breathless. I helped. Everyone's safe now. Elira smiled, her admiration growing. I saw. You were very brave. Leo shrugged, a small smile on his lips. I just wanted to help. They sat together in silence, the events of the night still heavy in the air. Finally, Leo turned to her, his small hand reaching out to touch hers. I promise.
I'll come back for you.
One day, Elira nodded, her own hand finding his. I'll wait. Leo, I'll wait. Days turned into weeks, and the colony slowly recovered from the minor disaster. But the memory of that night stayed with both children. They played together when they could, shared stories, and laughed under the twin suns. Yet as the colony expanded and more humans and aliens arrived, their time together became shorter. One morning, Leo's family received orders to move to a different sector of the colony, far across the Silver Plains. It was a necessary relocation for his father's work, and there was no choice. Leo ran to Elira one last time, his small suitcase in hand. I have to go, he said, his voice trembling. But I'll come back. I promise. Elira's eyes filled with tears, but she forced a small smile. I'll wait for you, Leo. I'll remember your promise. They hugged tightly, two small beings bound by a vow made under the alien tree, unaware that the years ahead would test their patience, their courage, and their hope. As Leo disappeared into the horizon, Elira whispered to herself, one day, I hope you really do come back. From that day on, both children carried the promise in their hearts. Leo studied everything he could about engineering, exploration, and survival, preparing for a future where he might one day return. Elira trained in diplomacy and science, determined to make a difference in her world and be ready for whatever the universe might bring. Though separated by distance, culture, and experience, the memory of their laughter, the games in the silver grass, and the promise under the glowing tree remained vivid. It was a bond forged not by obligation but by admiration, respect, and the innocence of youth, a bond that no obstacle could easily break. And so, under the twin suns and moons of Zithra 4, two children dreamed of a future together, unaware of how much the universe would demand of them before they could fulfill their promise. Little did they know, years later, fate would test their courage, their loyalty, and the strength of a vow made with a child's heart, but a promise that held the power to unite two worlds. The colony of Zithra 4 had grown far larger in the years since Leo and Elira had parted ways. Human and alien settlements stretched across the Silver Plains, connected by winding paths and hovering transport pods. Technology hummed everywhere. Energy shields shimmered over the fields, and small drones floated through the skies, carrying goods and monitoring crops. Leo's family had moved to the northern sector, a distant region filled with rocky hills and mineral-rich deposits. His father continued his work as a lead engineer, and Leo, now 12, spent every free moment learning from him. He was fascinated by machines, tools, and devices that could manipulate energy, gravity, and even small atmospheric systems. Yet amid all his studies and experiments, one thought always lingered in his mind. Elira. He often recalled their games in the silver grass, her laugh like chimes, and the promise he had made under the glowing tree. Many nights lying beneath the twin moons, he whispered to the stars, I'll come back for you, one day. I promise. Meanwhile, Elira's life had changed in her own way. She had grown taller, her features more defined, and her shimmering skin now reflected the soft blues of her planet's evening skies. The little girl who once watched humans play had become a young teenager, determined to prove herself among her people. Many alien elders doubted her abilities, thinking her fascination with human culture and technology frivolous. But Elira was persistent. She spent hours studying human engineering manuals, learning their language, and practicing her diplomatic skills. She wanted to be ready for the day when humans and aliens would work together, and perhaps secretly she wanted to be ready for Leo. The memory of his promise, though distant, gave her hope and courage. Years passed, and their paths rarely crossed. Occasionally, she would hear news about the young engineer who had helped stabilize the colony during the quake, the same boy who had promised to return. People spoke of his clever solutions and fearless attitude even at a young age. Each report made Elira's heart race. Could it really be him? She wondered. One day, a message arrived at her father's diplomatic office. A team of engineers had been assigned to collaborate with alien experts on a new energy project. Among them was Leo. Her breath caught as she read the message. The boy from her childhood, her friend, her promise, was coming back to their planet. The weeks that followed were tense with anticipation. Elira trained harder, prepared her knowledge, and rehearsed ways to impress him without seeming nervous. She couldn't shake the memory of their childhood bond, but she also worried. What if he had changed? What if the promise had been forgotten? The day of his arrival, the spaceport was buzzing with activity. Ships landed and lifted off, carrying cargo and travelers. Aliens of different species moved gracefully alongside humans, their conversations a mix of languages and tones. Elira stood near the docking station, her heart pounding. Then she saw him. Leo had grown taller, stronger, and his dark hair now framed a face that radiated determination and intelligence. He wore the uniform of the engineering corps, but his eyes, bright and curious, still held the same spark she remembered. Their eyes met across the crowd, and for a moment the bustling spaceport seemed to disappear. Leo's face lit up with recognition, and he began moving toward her, dodging drones and workers with ease. "Elira," he called, his voice just as warm as she remembered. "Aleo," she said, the word slipping out before she could correct it. Then she smiled, steadying herself. "Leo, you're—" Here he grinned. "I promised I would come back." "I didn't forget," she felt her chest tighten. The years of waiting, the doubts, the training, they all seemed worth it in that moment. I'm glad you remembered." They spent the next hours catching up, walking through the spaceport, sharing stories of the years they had spent apart. Leo spoke of the projects he had worked on, of machines he had built, and of the lessons he had learned. Elira told him about her studies in diplomacy, her fascination with human technology, and her desire to make a difference in the colony. Though much had changed, their friendship felt as natural as it had in the silver grass. The bond forged in childhood had not faded. It had only grown stronger in the distance. Their reunion, however, was not just a personal moment. The collaboration that brought Leo to Elira's planet was crucial. The colony's energy grid, which connected human and alien settlements across the plains, needed upgrades to sustain the growing population. This required both human engineering expertise and alien knowledge of energy systems unique to their planet. Leo and Elira were assigned to the same team, tasked with designing a new energy stabilizer, capable of handling fluctuations caused by the twin suns. The project was complex, demanding, and fraught with risk. But together they approached the challenge with focus and determination. Late nights in the lab brought them closer. Leo marveled at Elira's understanding of alien energy systems, while she was impressed by his ability to combine human ingenuity with practical solutions. They argued, laughed, and experimented, often finding themselves lost in thought about the same small, glowing tree where they had made their promise so many years ago. One evening, after a long day of testing prototypes, Leo and Elira stepped outside to the colony's gardens. The twin moons reflected on the silver grass, casting long shadows. Leo sat on a small bench, exhausted but satisfied. "You've changed a lot," he said softly. "Not just in looks. You've grown into someone remarkable." Elira blushed, a little embarrassed by the compliment. "You've changed too, Leo. You're more confident and stronger. I can see why everyone admires you," Leo chuckled. "I learned from the best. My childhood teacher." He nodded toward her. "You always inspired me to do better, even when I didn't know it." Elira felt warmth spread through her chest. I always remembered our promise," she admitted. "Even when I doubted, I kept it in my heart." He reached out, taking her hand gently. "So did I, that promise. It gave me something to aim for. It made me want to be someone worthy of you." For a long moment, they sat together, hands intertwined, two souls connected across years of growth, challenges, and distance. Around them, the colony hummed with life, but in that small garden, there was only the quiet bond between them. But life, as always, demanded action. The project required them to travel to the outer sectors of the planet, where energy nodes were unstable, and alien storms often swept through. It was dangerous work, and they would have to rely on each other completely. Elira felt a mix of excitement and fear. She had trained for years to be ready for this kind of mission. But now, with Leo by her side, the stakes felt even higher, not just for the colony's survival, but for the promise they had made as children. The next morning, they boarded a sleek hovercraft, leaving the comfort of the central colony behind. The wind of Zithera 4 rushed past them as the craft lifted into the sky. Leo checked the instruments, his hands steady and confident, while Elira monitored energy readings and navigation. They worked in harmony, their trust in one another growing with each passing mile. During moments of quiet, they would glance at each other and smile, the unspoken acknowledgement of their shared past and present filling the space between them. Each glance reminded them of the promise of the bond formed long ago, and of the hope that had carried them through years of separation. As the craft landed near the first unstable energy node, Leo and Elira stepped out, feeling the alien winds tug at their clothing. The node pulsed erratically, sending sparks of blue energy into the sky. "This will be tricky," Leo said, his voice calm but serious. "We need to stabilize it before the storm hits." Elira nodded, her eyes focused. "We can do it. Together." And in that moment, it was clear. The promise of childhood was no longer just a dream. It was the foundation of a partnership built on trust, courage, and admiration. The little boy who had once run through the silver grass and the young girl who had once watched him laugh were now a team, facing challenges that would test their minds, their skills, and their hearts. Whatever the universe threw at them, they would face it side by side, the memory of a promise guiding them through the storms of life. The outer sector of Zithera 4 was a wild and untamed region, far from the safety of the central colony. Silver plains gave way to jagged rock formations, and strange, glowing plants sprouted unpredictably along the slopes. The twin suns had set hours ago, leaving the sky painted in deep indigo, with the moons casting a soft, ethereal light across the landscape. Leo and Elira stepped carefully out of the hovercraft, their boots crunching over the crystal-like soil. The energy node ahead pulsed with irregular bursts of blue light, sending arcs of electricity into the air. It was both beautiful and dangerous. "This node is worse than the report suggested," Leo said, scanning the readings on his handheld device. "The energy is unstable. If we don't act quickly, it could overload and damage the surrounding grid." Elira nodded, studying the node's pattern. "We'll need to synchronize our adjustments. I can control the alien energy flows, but I'll need you to calibrate the human systems at the same time." Leo smiled. "Exactly what I was thinking." They moved into position, working in perfect coordination. Leo adjusted the human energy regulators while Elira manipulated the alien conduits. Sparks flew and the air hummed with power. It was delicate work. One wrong move could trigger a cascade failure. For hours they labored, communicating through gestures and soft words, their focus absolute. Occasionally they glanced at each other, sharing small smiles of encouragement. The years of separation had not weakened their connection. If anything, it had strengthened it. They knew each other instinctively now, understanding not just words but the unspoken cues of thought and emotion. Suddenly, a surge of energy shot out from the node, sending a wave of force toward them. Leo grabbed Elira's arm, pulling her to safety behind a rock formation. "That was close," he exclaimed, his heart pounding. Elira's eyes were wide but determined. "We can't stop now. The node is unstable. It's going to get worse before it gets better." Leo nodded, taking a deep breath. "All right." Together, they resumed their work, adjusting the energy flows with careful precision. The storm of power around them intensified, lightning-like arcs jumping between the node and the ground. The winds picked up, carrying fine particles of glowing dust that stung their skin. But through it all, they remained focused, supporting each other both physically and mentally. Hours passed, and fatigue began to weigh heavily on them. Leo wiped sweat from his brow and looked at Elira. "We need a plan to stabilize the final surge. If we mistime it, the entire sector could be affected." Elira studied the node, her mind racing. "I think I can create a feedback loop using the alien conduits, but you'll need to synchronize the human systems to match it exactly." 1 second off and it could fail. Leo's eyes met hers. "We've faced harder challenges before. We can do this." They set up the final adjustments, moving with precision and confidence. As the feedback loop began, The node pulsed rhythmically, responding to their combined efforts. Sparks of blue energy danced in the air, forming arcs of light that twisted and shimmered like ribbons. Then, unexpectedly, the node emitted a massive surge, stronger than anything they had encountered. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the wind howled around them. Leo shielded Illyra instinctively, pushing her behind him. "Hold on," he shouted. "We need to stabilize it now." Illyra's hands moved rapidly, her alien energy flowing in perfect rhythm with the human systems. Leo adjusted the regulators with all his strength, timing each calibration precisely. The node pulsed one final time, then silence. They froze, waiting for any sign of instability. Slowly, the energy settled, the node glowing steadily, calm and balanced. They had done it. Illyra exhaled, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in hours. "We did it," she whispered, a smile breaking across her face. Leo grinned, his chest heaving with exhaustion. "Yes, we did it. Together." For a moment, they simply stood there, catching their breath, letting the reality of their success sink in. The danger had been real, the stakes high, and yet they had triumphed. As the storm of energy faded, the moons reflected in their eyes, and Leo looked at Illyra with a quiet intensity. "You were amazing," he said softly. "I've never seen anyone work like that. Not human, not alien, not anyone." Illyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. "So were you, Leo. You never gave up even when it seemed impossible. I've never met anyone like you." Leo took a small step closer, his hand reaching for hers. "I've been waiting for this, waiting for the chance to show you I can keep my promise." Illyra's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and anticipation. "Leo?" Before she could speak further, a sudden rumble shook the ground. The storm in the distance had intensified, and another energy node nearby had become unstable, threatening to cascade across the sector. "They couldn't delay. Come on," Leo shouted, grabbing her hand. "We have to move." They ran through the glowing plains, dodging obstacles and leaping over jagged rocks. Their teamwork was flawless. Each instinctively knew where the other would move. The bond forged in childhood had matured into a powerful connection of trust and coordination. Reaching the second node, they quickly assessed the situation. The energy flows were chaotic, unpredictable, and dangerous. Leo's mind raced as he analyzed the human systems, while Illyra worked to control the alien conduits. "This one's going to be tricky," Leo said, sweat dripping down his face. "We need to split our focus. I'll handle the regulators, you manage the conduits, and we'll synchronize for the final surge." Illyra nodded. "Ready? Let's do it." They began their work, moving with a rhythm that only years of shared experience could create. Sparks flew, the ground trembled, and the winds roared, but they remained calm, their focus unwavering. Minutes stretched into hours as they fine-tuned the systems, anticipating every fluctuation, correcting every minor error. Finally, the node began to stabilize, the energy flowing smoothly, the risk of cascade failure disappearing. They collapsed onto the ground, exhausted but triumphant. Around them, the alien plains were calm once more, bathed in the soft glow of the moons. Leo turned to Illyra, his expression serious but gentle. "We make a good team," he said softly. Illyra smiled, her eyes shining. "The best team," she replied. For a moment, they simply sat together, hands touching, hearts pounding in quiet understanding. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and immense pressure, and they had succeeded. More importantly, they had done it together. As the twin moons reflected on the plains, Leo finally spoke, his voice low and sincere. "Illyra, I never forgot my promise. Even when we were apart, I knew I would come back, and now, I want to ask you something, not as a child, but as someone who has grown, who has learned, and who cares about you deeply." Illyra's breath caught, her heart racing. "Leo," he took her hand, holding it gently. "I know it's soon, and I know there's much we still have to face. But I want you to know, when I said I would marry you one day, I meant it, and I still do." Illyra's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of joy and disbelief. "Leo, you really mean that?" He nodded, a small determined smile on his lips. "Yes. And I'll prove it every day for as long as I live." The moons cast their gentle light upon them, illuminating two young hearts bound not just by childhood promises but by shared courage, trust, and admiration. The trials they had faced had only strengthened their connection, and now the future seemed full of possibilities. Together, they stood hands intertwined, ready to face whatever challenges the universe might throw at them. Their childhood vow had survived distance, time, and danger, proving that the bonds of trust and love could withstand even the harshest trials. And in that moment, beneath the twin moons of Zithera 4, Leo and Alira knew that their story was only beginning. The universe was vast, full of uncertainty and adventure, but whatever came next, they would face it side by side, hearts united, dreams aligned, and promises kept. The twin suns of Zithera 4 had just risen when Leo and Alira prepared for their next mission. This time the task was even more dangerous. The energy grid in the outer sector was being threatened by a series of unpredictable solar flares. These flares could overload the nodes, potentially causing blackouts across the colony. Leo checked his equipment carefully, his hands steady and precise. Alira was beside him, her expression determined as she ran diagnostics on the alien conduits they would need to stabilize. "This isn't going to be easy," Leo said, his eyes scanning the sky. The first flares were visible, glowing like golden arcs in the atmosphere. Alira nodded. "We've faced challenges before. We just need to stay calm and work together." Leo smiled at her confidence. Together, always. They boarded the hovercraft, which hummed softly as it lifted into the sky. The outer sector stretched before them, jagged cliffs and glowing plants forming a surreal landscape. The wind whipped past, carrying particles of sparkling dust that stung their skin. As they approached the first unstable node, the situation became clear. The solar flare had already begun to affect the energy flows, creating surges of power that danced across the node like wild lightning. "This is worse than I thought," Leo said, gripping the controls. "We'll need to adjust the regulators in real time while you control the conduits." Alira nodded, focusing intently. "I'm ready." The hovercraft landed near the node and they stepped out, bracing against the strong winds. Sparks of energy crackled in the air, illuminating the landscape in brilliant blue and gold. The node pulsed erratically, threatening to destabilize at any moment. "We need to synchronize perfectly," Leo said. "One mistake and the node could explode." Alira took a deep breath. "We can do this." They worked side by side, moving with precision. Leo adjusted the human regulators while Alira manipulated the alien conduits. Sparks flew and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Every adjustment had to be calculated, every movement deliberate. Hours passed and the solar flares continued to intensify. The wind howled and the air was thick with charged particles. Leo's hands moved quickly over the controls, sweat dripping down his forehead. Alira's focus never wavered. She adjusted the conduits with skill and confidence, her alien abilities complementing Leo's human expertise perfectly. Suddenly, a massive surge of energy shot out from the node, sending a shockwave across the ground. Leo grabbed Alira instinctively, pulling her behind a protective barrier. "That was close," he shouted over the roar of the wind. Alira's eyes were wide, but she nodded. "We can't stop now. The next surge will be worse. We have to finish this." Leo took a deep breath. "All right. Together." They resumed their work, their movements synchronized perfectly. The node pulsed violently, the energy crackling around them, but they remained calm, trusting each other completely. Each adjustment was precise, each calculation exact. They were no longer just two individuals. They were a single unit, their minds and actions in perfect harmony. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the node began to stabilize. The energy flows became smooth, the surges decreasing until the node glowed steadily, calm and balanced. Alira let out a sigh of relief. "We did it," Leo smiled, exhaustion and satisfaction mixing on his face. "Yes, we did it. Together." They took a moment to rest, sitting on the edge of the cliff as the twin suns rose fully above the horizon, casting warm light across the outer sector. The beauty of the landscape was breathtaking, but neither of them could relax completely. There were more nodes to stabilize, more challenges ahead. As they prepared to move to the next node, Alira spoke softly. "Leo, you've changed so much since we were children. I always wondered what you would become." Leo looked at her, a small smile on his lips. "And I wondered the same about you. You've grown strong and capable, someone who can face any challenge." Alira felt warmth in her chest. "I never forgot our promise, Leo. Even when we were apart, I held on to it." Leo's expression softened. Neither did I, that promise. It guided me through everything. It made me want to be someone worthy of you. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the bond between them stronger than ever. The dangers of the mission, the years of separation, and the challenges they had faced had all brought them closer. The promise made in childhood was no longer just a dream. It was becoming a reality. But their work was not done. The next node was located on a narrow plateau, exposed to the full force of the solar flares. The hovercraft landed carefully and they stepped out, feeling the intense heat and energy in the air. "This one will test everything we've learned," Leo said, adjusting his equipment. Elira nodded. "We'll succeed." "We always do." Together. They moved into position, each step calculated and precise. The node pulsed violently, and the energy arcs threatened to strike the ground at any moment. Leo adjusted the human regulators while Elira controlled the alien conduits. Their actions synchronized perfectly. A sudden surge sent a bolt of energy across the plateau, and Leo shielded Elira instinctively, pushing her behind him. The air crackled with power and the ground trembled beneath their feet. "Hold on," Leo shouted. "We need to stabilize it now." Elira's hands moved quickly, her alien energy flowing in perfect rhythm with the human systems. Leo's adjustments matched hers precisely, their combined efforts creating a feedback loop that began to calm the node. The energy arcs twisted and shimmered like ribbons. Then slowly, steadily, the node stabilized. The solar flares continued to rage in the sky, but the immediate danger was under control. They collapsed onto the ground, exhausted but triumphant. Around them, the plateau was calm, bathed in the light of the twin suns. Leo turned to Elira, his expression soft. "We make a good team," Elira smiled, her eyes shining. "The best team." For a moment, they simply sat together, hands touching, hearts pounding in quiet understanding. The trials they had faced had strengthened their bond, proving that trust, courage, and determination could overcome even the most dangerous challenges. Leo took a deep breath, his eyes meeting hers. "Elira, I've been waiting for this moment, waiting to show you that I can keep my promise, that I can be the person you believed I could be." Elira felt tears of joy prick her eyes. "Leo, you've already proven it. Not just with words, but with everything you've done." He smiled, a quiet determination in his eyes. "And I'll continue to prove it. Every day, for as long as I live." The twin suns reflected in their eyes as they stood, hands intertwined, ready to face whatever challenges the universe might bring. They had grown from children who had played in silver fields to young adults capable of extraordinary courage and skill. Their bond, forged in innocence and strengthened through trials, was unbreakable. And as they looked out over the outer sector, the promise of the future shone as brightly as the twin suns. Whatever came next, they would face it together, hearts united, dreams aligned, and promises kept. The colony of Zithera 4 was alive with celebration. Word had spread across the settlements that the energy grid had been fully stabilized, thanks to the brilliant work of Leo and Elira. Humans and aliens alike marveled at their teamwork, and the twin suns cast a golden glow across the fields, reflecting off the silver grass like liquid sunlight. Leo and Elira stood together near the central plaza, the hum of activity around them fading into the background. For months they had worked side by side, facing dangers, storms, and unpredictable energy surges. Each challenge had tested their skills, their courage, and their trust in one another. Yet through every trial, their bond had grown stronger, deeper, and more unbreakable. Leo looked at Elira, the girl he had promised to return to, the girl who had waited patiently while he grew into the man he had become. Her shimmering skin reflected the sunlight, and her eyes, bright with intelligence and warmth, held the same spark he remembered from their childhood. He reached into his pocket, feeling the small box he had carried for days, hidden carefully so she would not see. His heart pounded, not from fear but from anticipation. After years of separation, after countless adventures and challenges, he was finally ready to fulfill the promise he had made as a little boy under the glowing tree. Elira noticed his focus and tilted her head, curiosity and amusement mingling in her expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. Leo smiled, a small, confident smile. "I was thinking about promises." "And keeping them." Elira raised an eyebrow. "Promises?" He took a deep breath, holding her gaze. "Do you remember the day we played in the silver grass and I promised you I would marry you one day?" Elira's eyes widened, the memory flooding back. I, I remember, she said, a soft smile forming on her lips. I never thought you would actually remember it. I never forgot, Leo said quietly. Even when we were apart, even when I faced challenges I didn't know I could handle, I kept that promise in my heart. And today, I want to show you that promises can last. He knelt down on one knee, pulling the small box from his pocket and opening it to reveal a delicate ring. The sunlight caught the gem, making it sparkle like the twin suns themselves. Elira gasped, her hands covering her mouth. Leo, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Leo replied, his voice steady but full of emotion. I just want you to know that I mean what I said as a child. I've grown, I've learned, and I've become someone worthy of you. Will you marry me? Tears welled in Elira's eyes, her heart overflowing with joy, disbelief, and love. She knelt beside him, taking his hands in hers. Yes, Leo, I will. I've waited all these years for you to come back, and now you're here. I trust you, I admire you, and I love you, Leo smiled, slipping the ring onto her finger. Then our promise is no longer just a memory. It's our future. The crowd around them, who had been quietly watching, erupted into cheers and applause. Humans and aliens alike celebrated not just the success of the energy project, but the story of trust, courage, and love that had inspired the entire colony. For a while, Leo and Elira simply held hands, smiling at one another, feeling the weight of years of hope and effort melt into joy. The twin suns shone above, and the silver grass shimmered like a sea of stars beneath their feet. Over the next days, the colony held a celebration in their honor. Engineers, diplomats, and citizens of all ages gathered to congratulate them. Stories were told of the dangerous solar flares, of the precise coordination required to stabilize the nodes, and of the courage displayed by the pair at every turn. But through every tale, one truth remained clear. Their bond had been forged in childhood and strengthened through every challenge. During the celebration, Leo and Elira wandered away from the crowd, seeking the quiet comfort of the gardens where their story had begun. The glowing tree, their childhood landmark, stood tall, its branches swaying gently in the wind. Elira reached out, touching the trunk. Do you remember this place? She asked softly. Leo nodded, kneeling beside her. I remember every detail. The silver grass, the games we played, and the promise I made. Elira smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. It's amazing. All those years I wondered if we would ever meet again. And now, here we are. Leo reached for her hand, holding it gently. We've both grown so much since then. But the promise never changed. It guided me through every step, every challenge, and now, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that promise to you. Elira squeezed his hand. And I want to spend my life beside you, facing whatever the universe brings. As they stood together, the twin suns reflected off their joined hands, casting long, intertwined shadows across the ground. It was a perfect moment, a union of past, present, and future. In the following weeks, Leo and Elira worked not only to maintain the energy grid, but also to inspire others in the colony. Their story of courage, trust, and promises became a legend among humans and aliens alike. Young children played in the silver grass, imagining adventures and friendships that could span worlds. Engineers and diplomats collaborated more closely, inspired by the teamwork of the pair. And the bond between humans and aliens grew stronger, proving that understanding and respect could bridge even the greatest differences. One evening, as the twin moons rose over Zethra 4, Leo and Elira returned to the glowing tree. They sat together in the silver grass, holding hands and watching the moons reflect off the horizon. I never thought a promise made as a child could lead to this, Elira said softly, her eyes bright with emotion. Leo smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Neither did I, but it did. And it will continue to guide us for the rest of our lives. Elira leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. I'm glad you came back, she whispered. I'm glad I remembered, Leo replied, his voice gentle but certain. And I'll always remember, and I'll always be here. The twin moons reflected in the silver grass, casting a serene light over the two figures. Around them, the colony continued to thrive, humans and aliens working side by side, inspired by the courage, trust, and love of two individuals who had proven that even the simplest promises could withstand the test of time and the challenges of the universe. Leo and Elira sat quietly, hands entwined, hearts united. The years of separation, the trials of the outer sector, and the dangers they had faced had only strengthened their bond. Now, with the promise fulfilled, they looked toward the future with hope, courage, and an unbreakable connection. And so, beneath the twin moons and the glowing tree of Zithera 4, a story that began with laughter, innocence, and a child's promise reached its perfect fulfillment. The little boy who once said, "I'll marry you one day," had returned, and the vow of the past had become a foundation for a shared future, one filled with love, trust, and endless possibilities. Together, they would continue to explore the universe, face challenges, and inspire those around them. Their story was a testament to the power of promises, the strength of human spirit, and the bonds that could span not just distance and time, but worlds themselves. And as they looked out over the shimmering plains of Zithera 4, hand in hand they knew one truth above all. No matter what the universe brought, they would face it together, hearts aligned, dreams intertwined, and promises kept forever.